We wanted to definitely go somewhere else. We knew it was time to try something different, and the idea of going to another country really appealed to us. And we always liked Germany.
West Berlin wasn't enclosed space, but it was also full of interesting people.
We wanted to record an album in a place that was alive, not in a place that was dead, like London.
Coupled with the fact that we'd been on the road a lot and travelled around much more, there was a slight different feeling to the whole recording.
I think people were aware of the stories that people go to Berlin and make great records, or even artists go to Berlin and make great art. You don't realise till you actually go to Berlin, or certainly around that time, how creative and exciting and just weird the place was, because the walls still open. There were things you'd never thought of. You read about these things, but when you went there, you thought, this is actually real. It is quite a grey, spooky place. It's not Blade Runner continuously, but it was raining when I went.
Because we all worked in the same place, we all stayed in the same place, same hotel. We tended to go out together.
It was just crazy here, and we were going still very young, and we sort of were treated not as cool as everyone else.
The idea of going to Hansa Studios, where sort of Bowie had worked, and Iggy Pop, that Martin and I were certainly big fans of. It was. We really had like a gang mentality then as well. It was us against the world.
Die generelle Szene in Berlin war sehr intim, weil wir ja ringsrum eine Mauer hatten. Und durch diese Mauer war auch die Gruppe der Berliner eigentlich viel enger. Jeder kannte jeden und abends auch in den Clubs waren immer so mehr oder weniger die gleichen Leute. Und da war Berlin eigentlich, hat richtig Spaß gemacht.
It suited very much the fact that they were having big success in Germany, and Martin had a German girlfriend and was talking German quite fluently. And the whole thing seemed to fit quite well.
Berlin at that time was a very strange place with a very special atmosphere, but I think that if we'd have recorded that album in London, it probably would have turned out something similar.
We were getting into a bit of systems music and stuff at the time, and a bit of Steve Reich. I'd been into it for years, but I think the guys were getting into it a little bit. Alan was definitely getting into sort of Philip Glassy things. So I think there's quite a little bit of that knocking around in the background,
It definitely was supposed to be tougher. We didn't want to be wimpy. We wanted to make powerful, strong records with a lot of atmosphere.
Something to do?
I was working with Einstürzen and Neubauten at that time in Berlin, who are like one of the archetypal metal bashing bands. That's not to trivialise what they do, you know. I mean, I'm a big fan of the lyrics as well, and the guys in general. But certainly a lot of what they were doing was taking found objects and striking them and making found objects into musical instruments with contact microphones and so on. And this is something we were already doing on Construction Time without knowing about Einstürzen and Neubauten. I met Neubauten again in Berlin, and I'd already made Halber Mensch with them when we came to Some Great Reward. And in my life, there was like a massive... I introduced Neubauten to sequences and sampling, and I was able to bring some of the work that I'd done with Neubauten to, you know, highlight some of the sounds and melodies and textures of the Depeche work. You know, so there was a big crossover.
Technology was moving really fast and we used it. The idea of creating a new sound that you hadn't heard before was much more interesting to us. And really it was the atmosphere that sound created which would be the template for the direction that a song would go in.
Daniel bought a synclavier, which, you know, opened up new avenues, and the sampling was so much better.
We weren't trying to be trendy or clever. We were just literally picking things up that were around us and saying, let's sample that, you know. And when you do that, you tend to come up with sort of hitting metallic objects, you know, because they seem to be all around you. And before you know it, you know, you're in the kitchen sampling knives and forks and scissors and stuff like that.
Okay, we've got this vague idea at the moment, which was used on the demo. We've got this vague idea at the moment, which was used on the demo. We've got this pebble, which we got from the mud. Anyway, the idea is to roll the pebble on this piece of metal along here, this window frame, thus making this sort of sound. And the idea is to take that sequence and to make an interesting rhythm out of it, and to sequence it all through the song, you know, so people dance.
You're just playing them back off the synclavier now, you Mark?
Yep. We've just recorded them, we're just playing them back to see what they're like. That one's quite good, isn't it?
The whole thing about recording the Depeche was always trying to push it as far as we could. The songs were always strong, and then it was trying to put them into a really interesting and unusual and original musical kind of picture. And it was always that, trying to move forward, and Gareth was very good at pushing that.
Gareth was always a bit more than just an engineer, so full of ideas, more than just sort of sitting there just miking up a drum kit and saying, okay, off you go, play and I'll record you. He would have more radical ideas than that. Hansa Studio is actually 4 floors of studio, and we were in the top 4th floor. Studio 2 had the great big recording space, and Gareth wanted to set up a PA system, and we had tie lines going down from Studio 4 to 2, and we would send our sounds through this 2K PA, you know, at ridiculous audio levels.
People are people, so why should it be? You and I should get along so often.
The acoustics of People Are People and the sound of the beats and the big fills and things is all the sound of the rooms with the beats getting thrown around Hansa Studio, you know, 3 floors down for the bass drum. Snare drum 1 floor over, toms in another room over there kind of thing. The whole building was shaking.
It was quite a big sounding record, the biggest sort of, you know, in that sense, kind of biggest we'd ever made, and it seemed that it had something going for it.
It was taking social and political subject matter and making it quite poppy and commercial.
That stood out. Everyone just thought that is amazing as a piece of, you know, mid-80s pop. I'm not saying it's Martin's best song ever or anything, but for what it was supposed to be at that time, that was amazing. I think he really hit the spot with that one. In a way, that's one of the good things about that video for me, is that kind of industrial edge that the Battleship video gives it reflects to me kind of in a decent way what we were kind of trying to do with the sound as we were making the record.
Now you're punching and you're kicking and you're shouting at me. I'm relying on your common decency.
We just basically pressed play and just ran it, and everybody sang along, and it just seemed like it all sounded great even before we'd recorded it properly.
We thought it was a good song. Now we're not too keen on it. It's probably it's our biggest hit that we don't play.
Yeah, it overtook us somehow, you know. We knew it was that it's going to be very, very strong. Because again, it's very easy. The track is very easy, the rhythm is fantastic, the melody, everybody can sing along.
Diese Wortspiele, People are People, war einfach das, was der Deutsche sofort verstanden hat. Und dadurch war hier auch der große Erfolg möglich.
People are People was a record that, as soon as we went to radio, was an instant addition to everyone's program.
People are People hit a tone with the public. It addressed racism, sexism, and acceptance of one another. And I think that it was something that also appealed to the mainstream pop radio programmers at that time too.
It kind of took us by surprise that it went so big, you know. Monumental thing, People are People. It was an absolute smash.
Well, do you want me to do an interview while I'm doing it?
Yeah, you might as well save time.
I'm trying to play a riff into the synclavier sequencer. I'm going to play it wrong though, so I'm not very good at this one.
Lie to Me. I don't know if we did the best version of that we possibly could have done, but you know, I quite like that as a song.
Come on and lay with me. Come on and lie to me. Tell me you love me. Say I'm the only one.
Lie to Me was, I think, one of the strongest songs that Martin had written up to that point. I thought it just had a great feeling to it.
It was one of the first tracks that had this chord change that I've used over the years, overused over the years.
Lie to Me was one that we played for a long time live, which I always really liked. I think it's really simple and direct, and we toyed with the idea of bringing that back on this tour actually.
Of the innocent. When I say innocent.
Alan got a lot more involved in the production with Some Great Reward. I think that was, you know, a big turning point. Often, you know, Alan would sit in the studio with Daniel and Gareth till 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd be off at some bar or some club somewhere.
What are we doing? Trying to get the click in sync
Trying
again.
to get the click in sync yet again.
He was really into it, and he was the one, he didn't get bored, and he was very happy to sit around listening and twiddling them, you know, getting sounds right and stuff like that. No, he was definitely, in terms of being in the studio, sort of focusing in the studio on a kind of on a overall basis, Alan was definitely in there, you know.
My strength is really a sort of orchestrator and sort of sound manipulator, if you like, and finding ways to get the best out of what's there rather than come up with the original ideas or the initial song ideas. So I just decided best leave that to Martin. He's good at it, you know, and he's much more prolific.
mean, there are a lot of stories about how somebody was recorded. It might well have been that Dave tried it and that it didn't work out. And there's, you know, I think there's bound to be a couple of songs that Martin writes for the album where it's, you know, it works better with his voice.
It was really down to two things. If we thought they suited Martin's voice more, or if they were more of a personal nature, like Somebody.
It was probably the first, what you call, acoustic performed track on an album, you know. In fact, Martin sang it naked. It was his call.
Though my views may be wrong, they may even be perverted, she'll hear me.
I turned the piano the other way as I was playing, you know. But yeah, no, we recorded it live, just him and me in the big Studio 2 hall, and he stripped off for that one.
At the end of it all, she will understand me.
We had a few takes of it on different tracks, and they were all out of sync with each other. And so what we did is we played all the takes and faded one into the other, so they all kind of drifted in and out. And we had these massive tape loops going as well all the way around the studio of traffic noise and things like that, which we'd recorded in Berlin.
Just see if it looks like that. Looks pretty good.
It was experimental. We were trying things out. I had no idea they worked. And I don't know how Martin feels about it in retrospect, but I think it's a really great song, and I think we just twisted it sonically in a different way, you know, by doing that.
With every thought and with every breath, someone who'll help me see things in a different light. All the things I detest, I will almost like. I don't want to be tied to anyone's strings. I'm carefully trying to steer clear of those things.
As usual, we were running late in the schedule, and the band, certainly Dave, Martin and Fletch, had booked holidays, and it was kind of getting very nervous, getting very tense, because the album wasn't finished and the holiday period was coming up, and it's like, what are we going to do?
Mr. Miller, a few words, please, about the production so far.
We haven't got time, we're running out of time. Basically, we've had it. Basically, I don't see us, we'll ever finish this. It's over. Let's go home.
We can't go on holiday. We're overworked, man. We're going crazy.
And it was like, oh well, Dan, we've got to go on holiday. Good luck with finishing the album. I'm sure it'll be great. Anyway, see you in a couple of weeks. Bye. Kind of thing. And so the others went off on holiday and we finished the record. Al?
Yeah, that's about the size of it. What's the date? It's 12th of August. The lads have gone off on holiday. They've been away about 5 days now. In the meantime, we've completely put Stories of Old back in time, re-recorded just about every part of the song in good time. Now the funny thing that's happened is that Martin's, according to their telex which they sent us, Martin's lost his baggage, which went to first New York and then Johannesburg, so that's his karma for pissing off during the mixing. And yeah, you bastard.
The monster of the album in terms of, there's always one monster of the album in terms of getting it finished, and is Master and Servant. I suppose there's a bit of a reaction after the success of People Are People. Oh, we're going too poppy, Dan, you know, we've got to be careful, which is good, which is correct, you know. And I think we did make a conscious effort to make, we felt that the next single had to be a lot harder and a lot kind of, and different again.
We spent a long time on that track. Not just recording it, it's quite complicated, but also when we came to mix it, I think we spent like 7 days on the mix. I
think we were mixing it for some ridiculous amount of time.
Daniel, I feel a bit strange. I don't think I can go on, Daniel. I want to go on, but I don't think I can.
I remember being up all night with Gareth on the last night, editing the tapes and tape all over the room, and I remember leaving in the morning to go to the airport. It's like there'd been a huge snowstorm overnight. It was really freezing. It was 7 a.m. I'd been up for like 3 days. Because everything was late, I hadn't been able to play the track to anybody, so I arranged for them to come to the mastering room. We were listening through, and as the last chorus came in, something weird happened. We realised that the snare drum had been left out. We spent 10 days mixing this track, and it was so complicated. We were so burnt by the end of it. We hadn't noticed that we muted out the snare drum. We sort of sat around for about 5 minutes and said, well, you know, what are we going to do? Should we remix it? And everybody said, oh, no, nobody will notice.
You know, I mean, this was now, I think Martin was living in Berlin. We were going to like leather clubs and staying out late and getting a bit pervy and everything, Master and Servant, if you like. And it was like a pop interpretation of that, with the whip noises and the screaming and the pretty girl in the video and all this. It was all a bit, you know, edgy, a bit edgy in a witty kind of pop way, we thought, you know. I never get uncool, you know what I mean? I always stay calm, especially when I'm surrounded by such nice people.
Yeah, Bond. Come on, baby.
We've got what you might call a close working relationship, me and the boys. But we don't want to go into that now, do we?
Again, Gareth.
No, you play, Dave. You play.
Okay.
Should let Gareth out. Oh, yes, Dave. A little spanking.
It's an important moment because the band felt they could do a song like People Like People and do a song like Master and Servant and take the fans with them, and I think that was important.
Personally, I had no qualms about any of the words, you know, and to be honest, you know, how they might be received commercially also was no interest to me, really. The idea of being subversive, I think, is quite appealing, and there's a degree of that in Master and Servant and Blasphemous Rumours, and you know, the fact that you can basically get away with anything if you give it a good tune, you know.
I don't want to start any blasphemous rumours, but I think that God's got a sixth sense of humour, and when I die, I expect to find him laughing.
There was a lot of worry about Blasphemous Rumours because Fletch and Mart, I think they were like Sunday school goers when they were younger and stuff, you know, there was like quite a strong religious background in their upbringing. But yeah, sure, at that time, Blasphemous Rumours seemed like an attack on the church or something. Song's about God letting us down, basically, isn't it? That's the thing. Something bad happens, you know, everyone has this at some stage in their faith or in their life, you know, where something really bad happens and you think, well, if there's a God, you know, why did he let this really bad thing happen to my friend or to me or to, you know, to half the world?
By that time, we were getting pretty confident with, like, you know, what we wanted to do. And, Neil was given the tall order of trying to actually convince people at Radio 1.
The problem came with Blasphemous Rumours. That was a very, very difficult record. And there were a lot of people who felt that lyrically, and just the very title of it, that the record shouldn't be on the radio. And we did struggle with radio play, and there were certain people who objected to playing it, and they made it, they made their feelings very strongly known.
As she passed away, birds were singing in the summer sky. Then came the rain, and once again, a tear fell from the mother's eye. I don't want to start any blasphemous rumor.
Alternatively, over in the States got played. Stations out here on like Long Island and WDRE and started to play us on sort of underground alternative stations.
In 1982, we almost wrote off America. We thought that we would never be popular in America. And when we went back in 1985, we suddenly had become this cult phenomenon, and we were playing to like 15,000 people a night.
American radio was changing big time, and we were seen as one of the stalwarts of this new scene that was happening.
If you wanted your records to sell and you wanted people to know who you are, you had to go out there and work. MTV was still, semi-formulative stage, really. So there was the only way to get out there was to go and tour.
America in 1985, does that still count as some great reward? Oh, yes, it was long ago.
Mr. Silver, a few words?
Completely sold out. GC in good style.
Good result. Outrageous.
Yeah,
Good result.
and wait for Europe. The kids that were their audience were phoning the radio stations saying, why aren't you playing Depeche Mode? And there was this whole demand-led phenomenon that meant the top 40 stations who had ignored the band's last album were having to acknowledge the current one.
I mean, by that time, I actually thought that they were very much an individual voice. Martin certainly felt that he had to say things. I think he was saying them for a lot of people.
With Some Great Reward, I think that they kept their pop fans and their pop sensibilities, in the public eye and on radio, but that's when they really started getting back a certain coolness to them that they had in the very early days.
I don't think they were thought of as a teeny band anymore, and I think people understood they couldn't be dismissed as such. Yeah, they were coming of an age.
We felt it was tougher, and that we'd made it more interesting, more unusual. Those 3 albums leading on to Black Celebration, it's all part of it's just a real natural progression, isn't it, of a band developing.